Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Jab to follow it up. Again with the jab.
Yes! You may have seen the clip that did the rounds a while ago of Andrew Tate advising people not to have a guard.
So people who don't fight have this idea that you just keep your gloves up to protect yourself. But the problem is that doesn't work. Just flick.
He has some valid points, but taken out of context, this could lead to a very poor outcome.
Up top, his hands are down. His hands are down. His hands are down.
You may have seen the infamous image of Conor McGregor with his hands behind his back whilst facing then champion Eddie Alvarez. Then we have mixed martial artists like Wonderboy or Michael Venom Page, the guy that threw the Pokeball at his KO'd adversary.
Bruh.
Karate stylists that fight with both hands down by the waist 90% of the time. Then we have the iconic moments in boxing like Saul Canelo Alvarez turning his cheek to avoid a punch by mere millimetres. So why does the mantra, keep your hands up, echo across gyms around the globe?
Hands up! Hands up! Put your hands up! Put your hands up!
Well, I've broken this down into various points, both for and against a traditional boxing guard. So by the end of this video, you'll have all the context to know why and when to have your hands up. Protecting your head. So why do we have a guard? Well, it's obvious. Keeping your hands up by your head provides a layer of protection against incoming strikes. By having your hands in position to block or deflect these strikes, you reduce the risk of getting hit cleanly and potentially being knocked out or stunned. With your hands already there, it obviously takes less time to get something in the way of the punch.
Yeah, boy.
While having your hands up by your head is generally advisable, it's also essential to be adaptable and dynamic in your defence. Mixed martial arts involves a diverse range of techniques and situations, so you may need to adjust your guard depending on your opponent's style, your own strengths and weaknesses, and the specific circumstances of the fight. That is very important. The rule of thumb will be to begin with a solid foundation, and keeping your hands up is a wise strategy for beginners and experienced fighters alike. There will be times where a high guard is a non-negotiable. All fighters will have to call upon it at some point, so it's a good idea to practice it, especially early on in a fighter's development. Instilling discipline and habits. I think another reason why coaches are adamant on keeping your hands up, as it just builds good habits. Consistently keeping your hands up during sparring and training helps develop a good habit, your discipline, and this is a big factor in a coach adopting the keep your guard up as a mantra. If you're new to the sport, if you haven't been in the gym long enough for a coach to see you have a solid understanding of the basics, then it's a coach's duty to remind you to keep your hands up. A good coach will feel it is their responsibility to look after you and help keep you safe in a sport that is inherently dangerous. Demonstrating a safe defence is visually pleasing. You're going to make your coach happy. So when is it okay to not have a guard? Let's look at the pros to hands down. Countering. When trying to set up a counter, a fighter may bait the opponent by presenting their head as a target. When doing this, the player looking to counter will prepare their stance accordingly, widening their base, bringing their lead foot closer to the opponent, adjusting their weight accordingly so they can push off the front foot and spring backwards quickly, whilst also having their feet in position to throw the counter punch. Counter fighting in this manner is a very effective strategy, and that's essentially what it is. It is a strategy and a tactic that can be used within a fight, but maybe not used all the time, and it will depend on the opponent you're facing. Takedown defense. It might be appropriate to lower the hands in mixed martial arts to have them in a position to dig underhooks. Underhooks are used to elevate an opponent that's shot in on the legs, making it less likely they'll be able to complete the takedown. If an opponent can get their hands clasped together around both legs, it's almost certain they'll be able to pull the legs away from underneath the defender and ground them to the mat. By having hands in position to attain underhooks, it can save a lot of work of having to get back up, and the fighters can immediately pull a fighter up into an upper body clinch. Think Greco-Roman wrestling and Muay Thai. In mixed martial arts, if you're on your back, you're probably going to be losing. It would be considered as control time. Vision. Hands up by the head can sometimes be described as having blinkers on. It limits your vision, especially in the bigger gloves. Having a low lead hand has the advantage of a fighter having a greater field of vision. You'll be able to see things better that come around the side. This can be particularly useful when looking to evade kicks that come from just out of sight. Fighters like Sancho and Lerdilla favour the lean back technique to avoid roundhouse kicks, and this is much easier to time when you have that extra half a second of sight with no guard blocking your peripheral vision. You'll see the kick coming sooner. Rafael Fiziev is a master of the lean back within MMA, and he'll drop his hands in order to complete the evasive back bending technique. Think Neo in the Matrix. His hands aren't up by his head. Actually, they're doing a weird wavy thing, so maybe not the best example. Attack. It can be harder for an opponent to see your punches coming when they're coming outside his field of vision. Going back to our previous point, a jab from the waist is a very difficult technique to time, as not only does it come from out of sight, but the angle in which it comes from is different. When a fighter jabs from the guard, it is in line of sight, and the direction the punch travels straight across from A to B, in line with the fighter's head height. It makes it easier to slip or parry. An upward jab is very hard to slip, and the angle which it's thrown will affect the defender's ability to time a parry. The same can be said for punches like uppercuts and hooks when they begin from low. Alex Pereira is a great example of a heavy hitter that often carries his hands low.
Oh my goodness!
Oh no! Shit!
Oh my goodness!
Now we've seen the pros, let's take a look at some of the cons. Having your hands down in combat sports can expose you to several disadvantages and risks, making it a less advisable strategy compared to keeping your hands up. Increased vulnerability to strikes. Captain common sense here, stating the obvious, but with your hands down, your head and upper body are left unprotected, making you more vulnerable to getting hit cleanly by punches, kicks, elbows, knees, and any other strike. Having an over-reliance on head movement can leave you out of position. Your feet can get bunched up. You will have reduced defensive options with your hands down, and it's going to limit your ability to effectively block, parry, or deflect incoming strikes. This leaves you with fewer alternatives to defend against or counter your opponent's attacks, putting you at a disadvantage in exchanges. It's also going to require a lot more reaction time. So if you're not naturally the fastest person, this can be a problem. With your hands further away from your face and body, it's going to take longer to bring them back up to block or evade incoming attacks, giving your opponent more opportunities to land clean shots, again putting you at a disadvantage. Judicial disadvantage. In combat sports, judges may interpret having your hands down as a sign of weakness or a lack of control, potentially impacting their scoring of the fight, especially if you're at a novice level. A perceived lack of defensive responsibility may result in lost points or unfavourable judgment in close rounds. Referees want to see a fighter intelligently defend themselves. You hear the referee shouting that in mixed martial arts when a guy's on the floor. Defend yourself, defend yourself. Having your hands down might be a sign that you're fatigued and incapable of holding your hands up, giving the referee to think that you need their intervention. Clowning an opponent, doing things like deliberately dropping your hands to taunt them, can also be seen as distasteful, and referees can give warnings for unsportsmanlike behaviour. Repeat offenders could see themselves having points deducted or even being disqualified. It's aesthetically pleasing to the referee and the judges to see a fighter with his guard up. Just look at the recent example of Ben Whittaker, who was seen dancing around, hands low by his waist, being told off several times by the referee. It is often frowned upon. So the bottom line is, you don't always have to have your hands up. It's a matter of context. Learning to have your guard in the first place, giving you good basics and a solid foundation, is the way to go. When you're first starting off in the sport, you've got to learn to walk before you can run. The more you develop, the more understanding you have of the game, the more you can play with different styles and different defensive techniques. Mixed martial arts has a much wider scope as there's so many more styles within the sport. So if you're coming from a specific style like Taekwondo or Kyokushin Karate, then having your hands down might be seen as less important and beneficial to you from the get-go. But I would still say, with the dangers of boxing, with the danger of big hitters in mixed martial arts, it's still important to learn that defense. And at some point, you're going to need to have your hands up. Let me know what you think in the comments. What's your favorite method of defense? Do you think having your hands down is a valid approach to striking? As always, thanks for watching. Pro Striking out. I'll catch you later.